What dictation tips can you use to write quickly and easily? Hi there, my name is Brian Collins. Welcome to the Become a Writer Today channel. Hope you like the content in this video. If you do, hit thumbs up. If you want to get more writing advice like this, please subscribe to the channel. So a couple of years ago, I got repetitive strain injury, or RSI. Basically, I was spending hours working as a copywriter, typing at my mechanical keyboard all day. And I was also spending time writing short stories and blog posts for the Become a Writer Today site. So that was a lot of time to spend hunched over a keyboard. And although I got some ergonomic equipment which helped me, I was still spending an awful lot of time typing. So I wanted to figure out a way to change my writing workflow and potentially to increase my word count. Enter dictation. I've tried various forms of dictation over the years, experimented with various types of dictation software and tools, and I'm going to walk you through some tips that have helped me work dictation into my writing workflow. Let's dive in. My first dictation tip is to outline your work in advance. Sure, you can fire up dictation software and simply start speaking, but you'll save yourself a lot of time and effort if you know what you're going to say. No, you don't need to write complicated outlines. If I was dictating a 1,000-word article, I would simply outline 5 to 7 bullet points covering the key sections in the article. So the introduction, the 3 or 4 ideas in the article, the conclusion, and maybe one other bullet point. Then I'll simply use this to dictate the article in one go. In fact, I actually recommend that you create several outlines for several different articles or chapters that you want to dictate. That way you can work through more of your writing workflow in a single dictation session and save yourself a lot of time. My second tip for getting more from dictation is to get a good headset or a good set of earphones, because garbage in, garbage out. So in other words, if you're dictating in a noisy environment like outside when it's windy, the dictation software isn't really going to be that accurate. And similarly, if you send your audio file to someone to transcribe, they're also going to find it difficult to understand. So you can use a good set of headphones or earphones to improve your audio quality. Personally, I use the Apple AirPods, but any set of earphones that plug into your phone should save you an awful lot of time and headaches with dictation. Now, if you're dictating on a computer, you can buy special headsets which cost between $50 and $100. And again, this is going to get you more accuracy than just using the inbuilt speaker in your computer. My third tip for you is don't expect 100% accuracy. I've tested a lot of these tools and they all make bold claims about 95 to 198 to even near 100% accuracy. But I find that simply not true. I'm from Ireland and sometimes I find this software will struggle with my accent, or perhaps I'm speaking too quickly. I know other writers find dictation software can be difficult if they're using unusual character names or terms or language that maybe isn't recognized by the dictation software. So if you see errors in your dictation manuscripts, that's okay. You can teach the software over time to recognize these words, or alternatively, you could fix them during the editing process. My fourth tip for you while dictating is to speak slowly and deliberately. Dictation software, while it's improved a lot over the years, will still struggle if you speak quickly or if you use complicated language. So slow it right down as if you're explaining something simple to a child or to a toddler. This also works quite well because it gets you to think about what you're saying in advance, and it'll reduce the amount of errors that you'll make while dictating into your phone or into a dictation tool. My fifth tip for you is if you're going to use specific software like Dragon, which is the software that I use, it's helpful to learn some of the basic commands in advance. So if you want to say full stop, you actually need to say insert full stop or comma and so on. There are other commands you can use for self-editing, but I don't really edit with dictation software as I find that can be quite time consuming. But it is helpful if you learn some of the basic commands such as line break or new paragraph, because that will save you a bit of time when you're dictating your articles or your book chapter. My sixth tip for you while you're dictating is to consider dictating an article or a book chapter more than once. What do I mean by this? Well, think about it this way. When you're sitting down to write an article, whether it's by hand or using a keyboard, you may write a first draft and then later you may rewrite the entire first draft, and that will be the second draft. And you may do that 3 or 4 times depending on the deadline or what you want the article to say or how challenging the topic is. Similarly, sometimes I find when you dictate an article, sometimes the ideas will come out all jumbled and you won't quite say what you wanted to say as clearly and concisely as possible. So sometimes it's helpful to redictate an entire article. And because you can dictate hundreds of words in just a couple of minutes, it won't take you that much longer. And this is also why I recommend dictating several articles at once, because typically in an hour dictating, I can get through 3 or 4 articles if I dictate each one once or twice. And that'll translate into several thousand words, which is more than enough for me to self-edit that afternoon or the following day. My seventh tip for you relates to my story about getting RSI, and that's don't confine dictating to something you do at your computer. The fantastic thing about this type of software is you don't need to look at a screen and you don't need to be sitting hunched over a desk. In fact, you can take your iPhone or your Android phone and go for a walk with your earphones and you can dictate. People won't pass any remark because to them you just look like somebody on the phone. Another approach that I've used if I don't want to bring a phone with me because some of you might ring me or I'll get distracted is to get one of these, which is a voice dictation tool. So this one here is an Olympus and I'll just bring this with me and dictate into it while I'm out for a walk somewhere quiet. And then I can upload that file to a dictation service or to my dictation software of choice and I'll get all of the results sent back to me and then I can spend time self-editing it. The other great thing with going for a walk or getting outside while you're dictating is it can unlock fresh thinking and creative ideas. So often it can feel confining and boring when you're sitting at your desk all day, and if you feel like you got writer's block or you have nothing to say, getting the heart moving, getting outside will help you overcome a problem in your creative work much easier than sitting at your desk. Plus you get to get some exercise in too. My eighth tip for you is to edit at your keyboard. Yes, you can edit with dictation software. You can copy and paste, you can insert paragraphs, you can move around text, delete words, and so on. Personally, I found all of that is really time consuming and frustrating to do with dictation software. I find I can edit a lot quicker using keyboard shortcuts while at my desk. So here's what I'll do. I'll spend an hour or two dictating a couple of articles on a given morning, then I'll take a break, and then that afternoon or the following day, I will consider that part of my editing process and I will open up the file and edit them at my computer. This also works because you should write and edit at different times. They engage different parts of the brain. So when you're writing or when you're dictating, that's your first draft, that's when you're doing something creative. And when you're editing, that's when you're putting on your critical analytical hat. And often that's best when you're at your computer or at your desk. So combine both types of writing while dictating. My ninth tip for you is to experiment with a transcription service so you can gauge the quality and you can also gauge your budget. Now the transcription service that I've used the most over the years is Rev. So I started using Rev, which costs $1.25 per minute to transcribe interviews for articles I was writing and later for podcast transcripts. Sometimes if I'm dictating a book chapter and I want 100% accuracy and I want to save myself a lot of time, I'll just record all of the article once or twice into a tool like this. Then I'll just upload the audio file to Rev and then I'll get the file back the next day or even a couple of hours later. This works quite well because it reduces the amount of time I have to spend self-editing. So when you look at a dictated an audio file that's dictated, often there's lots of text you got to work through and filler words, mistakes and so on to fix. But when a human is actually transcribing your audio file, a lot of those errors are reduced and you can save yourself some valuable self-editing time. Obviously, you're probably not going to have a budget to do this for all types of writing projects. So consider doing it for something that's time sensitive, or when you want to hit a word count and you feel like you're behind, or if you want to spend a mammoth amount of time on a dictation session for a big creative project. So for example, if you dictated for an hour into a voice recorder like this, you could probably get through the first act of your book and then later you could spend the next few days self-editing it. So what software should you use for dictation and what tools do you need? Well, these days your iPhone or your Android phone has a fantastic voice recorder inside. Just remember to use a headset if you're dictating while out and about. You can use the voice recorder app on those devices and upload that file to a transcription service or to your dictation software of choice. Other tools you may want to consider, Dragon. So Dragon has dictation software for Windows. They used to have one for Mac and then they stopped supporting it, which was disappointing because I use a Mac. But they have an excellent service called Dragon Anywhere for iOS and for Android. And I use that quite a lot because it works great on my iPhone. Plug in my earphones and off I go. And then when I'm finished, I can share the transcribed file to my computer or to my Mac and write that way. You can also experiment with other transcription or dictation services like Otter.ai or Speech Notes, or you can use the inbuilt dictation software on your Mac or Windows. I've experimented and tested the inbuilt dictation software in Mac and on Windows, and I found that the accuracy just isn't as good as what you can expect from premium dictation software. It's also a little bit more frustrating to use in that it struggles with longer blocks of text. So while it might be helpful for dictating a quick introduction and so on, if you want to dictate longer articles, I'd recommend using Dragon or alternatively using otter.ai or speech notes. And finally, if you have more of a budget and if it's time sensitive and you've got a good chunk of work to get through, do consider spending a couple of dollars using a service like Rev so you can dictate a good chunk of your work in one mammoth session. Hope you enjoyed the dictation tips in this video. If you do, I've got an article all about dictation, which I'll include in the video notes. And if you want to get more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. Oh, and if you did like this video, I think you'll like this one next.